It's Algebra 2, Test 13, Study Guide, Part 2, picking up on number 21. We have x squared plus 20x plus 100 is equal to 100. First thing you want to do is you want to make it say equals 0. So we have to move this over by subtracting 100. If you do it there, do it here. So what you have now is x squared plus 20x equals 0. There's no c value anymore. There's no reason to find a new c value or anything. We just factor out what they have in common. Both of these terms, x squared and 20x, each have an x in common. So when you take that out, x times x gives you x squared, and x times positive 20 gives you 20x. All of that equals 0. So what this makes is two separate equations. It makes this first one, x is equal to 0, and this second part, x plus 20 equals 0. So we have the first one already, x equals 0, and when you subtract 20 on both sides, x equals negative 20. So both answers, negative 20 and 0. Distribute this one over here, 5 times y and 5 times 4. Bring your smaller y over, negative 6y. By adding 6y, when you do that, you're left with 11y on the right. Bring the 20 over to the other side by subtracting 20. When you subtract 20 on the right and you subtract it on the left, 2 minus 20 is going to be negative 18. So you have 11y equals negative 18. Undo 11 times something by dividing. Divide that side by 11. Negative 18 divided by 11. There's no common factor in those, so we'll leave it. Negative divided by positive is a negative 11 over 18. 23 distributes 7 times y, 7y, and 7 times 3 plus 21 equals 98. Subtract 21 on both sides, and 7y equals 77. Divide by 7 on both sides. Y is 11. Okay, factor this expression. It's a trinomial, so make it into two binomials. X times x gives you a, or x squared. Your factors of c, the factors of 8, 8 is separated. It's 1 and 8 and 2 and 4. Those are the only ones. So in order to get b, the pair 1 and 8 will only get you 7 or 9. You have to use 2 and 4 to get to 6. So 2 and 4. Remember, this sign tells you they're either the same or opposites. Positive means they're the same. Since they're the same, this one tells you they're both minus. When you factor it, x minus 2, x minus 6. We're going to do the same thing with number 25. Factor it out looking like this. X times x. Your factors of 56, or 1 and 56, 2 and 28. 3 goes, no, 3 doesn't go into it. 4 goes into it. And 14. 5 doesn't go into it. 6 doesn't go into it, and then 7 and 8 do, okay? But anyways, the pair that you're looking for is the one that's going to get you to b's value, and b's value in this case is, more specifically, it's negative 1, but it's, look at it as if it's 1. So remember, this is just going to get you 57 or 55. The next one's going to get you either 26 or 30. The next one's going to get you 10 or 18. The only one that's going to get you to 1 is this last pair. So you're going to need a number that's real, two numbers that are close to each other, 7 and 8. This sign right here tells you that they're different signs. One of them's going to be positive, one negative. This one says since they're different, the bigger one is negative. 8 is bigger, it's negative. 7 is smaller, it's positive. Plus 7 minus 8. 26, 6 tells you to write it in the form a plus bi. Remember, in order to make it, to get this negative out of here, we multiply that by I. So I times the square root of 9 plus 8. We know what the square root of 9 is. It's 3. So we have I times 3. But it's both positive and negative, that value, plus 8. So we want to make it into the form a plus bi. A is this value that's not multiplying by anything. So 8 plus or minus 3 times I, a plus bi. 27 says find the missing value to complete the square. You're looking for c. Remember, c is b divided by 2 squared. So b divided by 2, b is 24 in this case. Divided by 2 gives you 12, and when you square that, you get 144. There's your c value, 144. 28 says solve the quadratic by completing the square. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this one over. It doesn't work. In order to move it over, we have to subtract 4. So now what we have is x squared plus 2x plus c, we need a new value, equals negative 4. So in order to find a new c, we're going to do just like we did on problem number 27. We're going to take b's value divided by 2 and square it. B's value in this case is 2, divided by 2 is 1, and 1 squared is positive 1. So that's our new c value. But remember, when you add 1 to one side, you have to add it to the other side or you'll unbalance it. So right here we have a perfect trinomial. We can take the square root of a, or we can take the square root of x squared, I should say, and we're going to have x. And we can take the square root of 1 and we can get 1. This sign goes between them, plus, and it's squared, equals negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3. So we're almost done solving for it. In order to cancel out squaring something, we know to take the square root of it. If you do it there, you have to do it here. It's going to cancel, and it's going to leave us with x plus 1. There's no reason to leave it in parentheses anymore. X plus 1 equals the square root of negative 3. And remember, in order to find a negative square root of something, you have to multiply it by I, and then make it the positive square root. That's an imaginary number. One last thing we got to do, we have to get rid of plus 1 by subtracting it. And when we subtract it on this side, we're going to be left with x all by itself on the left equals negative 1, just to put the a term first like a couple of problems ago, plus or minus the square root of 3 times I. 29 says to rewrite it in vertex form. We're going to do the same exact thing almost that we just did. Move this one over because it doesn't make a perfect trinomial. So subtract 19. So when you subtract it on this side, what you're going to have is y minus 19 equals x squared minus 10x plus c. Okay, we got to find c again. Remember, c is b divided by 2 squared. B's value is 10. It's negative 10, but when you divide that by 2 and get 5 and square it, even if it's negative 5, when you square it, you get back to positive 25. So if you add 25 to that side, you have to add 25 to this side. Negative 15 plus 25, y is going to be plus 6. So y plus 6, positive 6, equals, then we're going to take the square root of this. Of x squared is x. The square root of this is 5. This says put minus in between them. And it's squaring the whole binomial. So x minus 5 squared. Get rid of plus 6. Move it over to the other side by subtracting it. When you do it there, you have to do it here. You can't take it away from minus 5 or negative 5 because it's inside the parentheses. So all we can do is simply write it as y is equal to x minus 5 squared minus 6. And this is your vertex form. And remember what the vertex is, it's the opposite of what you see in parentheses for the x, so it would be positive 5, and it's exactly what you see outside for y, negative 6. So 5, negative 6 would be the vertex of that parabola. Number 30 says use a quadratic formula to solve the equation. Remember what your quadratic formula is. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So all of this is, we labeling it's the easiest way. A, this is b, this is c. Plug everything in. So x's value equals negative, b's value is negative 3. So it's negative, negative, that's going to be positive for us. Plus or minus the square root of, remember we do the discriminant here, b squared again is negative 3 squared minus 4 times a is 5 times c is 6. And all of that's going to be over 2 times a, which is 5. So do what's inside that radical first. Negative 3 squared is going to be 9. Negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. And negative 20 times 6 is going to be negative, not times 60, excuse me. Negative 20 times 6 is going to be negative 120. So when we do that radical, and I know I'm jumped down a step, we're going to say 9 minus 120. So those are opposite signs. So subtract 120 minus 9. And you're going to get the square root of 111, or negative 111. And as bad at looking as that is, it actually makes easier work on us. A negative square root of 111. So we have minus a negative, which means positive 3, plus or minus the square root of negative 111 over 2 times 5, which is 10. So this is what x is. And the only thing we have to do to fix this, or the only thing we can do to make this more correct, is to take this negative out. So 3 plus or minus I times the square root of 111 over 10. The only thing we can do besides that, or the only thing we would possibly be able to do, would be to simplify 3 over 10, but neither one of those numbers shares a common factor. So as bad looking as that is, 3 plus or minus I times the square root of 111 over 10. Solve the equation by finding square roots. First thing you want to do, divide by 3. So that gives you x squared equals 6. Get rid of squaring something by taking the square root. X equals the square root of 6. Remember, it's either both plus or minus the square root of 6. You can't simplify that any farther. 32 says rationalize. Remember, you can't have a radical at the bottom like this. In order to undo that, multiply it by whatever it says over whatever it says. So whatever's at the bottom, just like that. Remember, anytime you multiply it, we're just going straight across here. Anytime you multiply the same radical times itself, it's going to take what's underneath it and just pull it out. Because the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, we know, is the square root of 9, which is going to simplify right back to 3. 5 times the square root of 3 over 3. And that's as far as you can go, because you can't simplify 5 divided by 3. 32 says to multiply this, more importantly, or more specifically with foiling. Foil. Negative 6 times 4 is negative 24. Oh, outsides. Negative 6 times positive square root of 2, negative 6 square root of 2. Inner is I. Negative square root of 2 times, that's supposed to say 4. That's where I'm going. Negative 4 square root of 2. And then L is the last terms. L is your last terms, so negative square root of 2 times positive square root of 2, and a negative times a positive is a negative. There's the same radicals again, square root of 2 times the square root of 2, that'll give you 2, or the square root of 4, which is going to come right back to being 2. So at this point, all you have to do is combine your like terms. Negative 24 and negative 2 is negative 26. Negative 6 square root of 2 and negative 4 square root of 2, we can put those two together too. Negative 6 minus 4 is negative 10 square root of 2. And that's all you can do with number 33. 34 says to write it in vertex form. Okay, we did vertex form a little while ago. Move minus 23 over by adding it to both sides. If you do it there, do it here. So what you have is y plus 23 equals negative 3x squared plus 18x plus c. Okay, we're going to take this one off. This is something we didn't go over. 34 is off of it. And that's it. There we go.